My name is John Passfield, and I'm going to read from my novel, Pauline Johnson, Know Who I Am. The title of this reading will be Pauline Johnson, Video 4, an interview with Pauline, Part 2. Here is the cover of the novel, Pauline Johnson, Know Who I Am. That's a photograph of the historical Pauline Johnson, a novel by John Passfield. Summary on the back cover of the novel. Pauline Johnson was born on the Six Nations Reserve in Ontario, Canada. Was she American, British, or Canadian? Was she Mohawk, English, or mixed? She added up her assets and liabilities and decided that the Pauline that the world would see would be Pauline the performance artist, Pauline on stage. As for the real Pauline, she would keep that to herself. A note on terminology here in the back of the title page. Such terms as First Nations, Aboriginal, Indigenous were not in common usage at the time at which the events of a novel take place. To refer to her mother's people, the historical Pauline Johnson used the terms English and white. To refer to her father's people, she used the terms Indian, Mohawk, and red. While the novel is fiction, I've used Pauline Johnson's terms throughout the novel in the interest of historical accuracy. In a previous reading, I read the first half of the 16-chapter interview that Pauline Johnson gives to a young reporter. She is retired from the stage, is suffering from cancer, and is living out her final years in Vancouver. She is a celebrity to the young reporter and to the public, of course, but she is also a person with time on her hands to review her entire life in search of the significant experiences that have led her to this moment. So now I will read the second half of that interview. I'll start with Chapter 9, page 68. So each chapter has about 50 of what I call image units, which could be a single line or a single paragraph or two or three paragraphs. 4 in each chapter contain the interview. And so the other 45 or so are interwoven and comment on the interview, but I'm only reading the interview right now. Here we go, Chapter 9. Regrets? I suppose I've had many, but I'll tell you about just one. I don't see any point in talking about the rest. I wrote a short story about my mother and my father. It told in 50 pages the complete story of their lives. I called it My Mother because it was she who told it to me. That story is filled with grandeur. That story is filled with grime. Grandeur and grime tumble like acrobats through life. It's a story of my mother, how she left England and came out here, about the childhood that she was eager to escape. The story of my father, how he served the Mohawk people, how he rose to be a man of accomplishment. It's a story of how they met. It was the meeting of thousands of years of separate blood. It was the meeting of two young people who fell in love. Then we go over a couple of pages and pick it up again. It's the story of their subsequent life, how my father had Chiefswood built, how they spent the next 30 years. It's a story of light and dark, how we do and don't fit in, how there are forces that seek to undermine what we have. Eventually, everything comes to an end. Children grow up and go out in the world. Death is waiting for every human around the bend. But my regret about that story, the title, as I mentioned, is My Mother, but it's about the roots, the origins, the foundations of my life. Are you ready for the great revelation? Won't seem much to you, perhaps. It's the little things that sting as one grows old. My regret. My regret. My regret. Well, I'd rather be known by my mother than by the song my paddle sings. I never managed to put that story on the stage. Now, the interview leaves that topic, but she'll come back to it. Let's go to Chapter 10, though, the next chapter, for continuation of the interview. Over the years, I've had two different partners. Owen Smiley and I were a team. We were together for 5 or 6 years. Then my second partner was Walter McCrae. The two acts were very similar. Only a few times was I completely on my own. There were the two of us on stage. Jokes, skits, occasional verses. Then my Indian and Grand Dam act. I had to change costumes between my turns, so I couldn't carry an evening on my own. The most successful bit of them all was a skit. It took place inside an asylum for the insane. I performed it with both my partners and never failed. So my partner would come on stage. He would say that he'd never visited an insane asylum before. He was surprised that there was no porter at the gate. Then I would come on stage. I'd come on from the other side, and I would say exactly the very same thing. A couple of pages later, we pick it up again. "Oh, hello," would begin the exchange. "So pleased to meet you. This is a nicer place than I thought that it would be. You've been here very long? Do you know many people here?" We would each tend to say very similar things. "No, I don't get out very often. I tend to stay inside. The other day, I went to meet the Queen." Well, the whole skit was very light. It was just a 10-minute bit. When we came back to a town, people would ask for it in droves. Two people chatting back and forth, chatting of weather and other pleasantries, such as visiting the Queen. An insane asylum, a pair of visitors exchanging pleasantries, all the while wondering why there's no porter at the gate. All the while, each thinking that the other one is insane. People would howl at every exchange. They'd be rolling in the aisles. It was all we performers could do to keep a straight face. And then in chapter 11, on to other topics in the interview. But how about you? What has your life been? Have you ever been interviewed? I would guess that you're in your 20s. Pardon me if I seem to probe. Did you say that this was your first interview, your very first job? But of course, life has happened to you. You can't get very far in life without a few bruises, without a few scrapes. Bruises and scrapes produce the tiniest of scars. I'm always looking for a new topic, for a poem or a story. But of course, I don't want to steal your best ideas. You'd be wise to keep your best stories to yourself. Excuse me, itchy nose here. You're the writer, don't forget, of your own story. Every story is hoping to turn itself into a legend. Every word is a word that you get to choose yourself. You can write of you under your own name. You can write with your name in disguise. Change every detail but how much sugar you have in your tea. Of course, there are things that hard work cannot alter. At a certain level of talent, it will be you, no matter what you choose to write. At another level of talent, nothing you write will be the essence of what I call you. And then over a couple of pages again. Are you married? Or about to be? Took a strange turn along the way? Don't answer. I'm not really asking. These are not things that I need to know. So, what is your story? No, don't make an answer. I'm helping you to decide. It's a question not of knowing, but of wondering. Truly wondering what you are. Well, I'll leave you alone for now. Perhaps you're uncomfortable under my gaze. How does it feel to be the recipient of such a probe? Did I mention to you that I am a journalist too? I've written articles about my peoples on both sides. But it is as a writer of poems that I am best known. It's just that meeting such a young writer, a writer so very young as yourself, stirs memories of thoughts that have lain dormant for quite a while. Then we'll move into chapter 12. Again, leaving out a whole chapter of imagery in each case. But here's chapter 12. Which of my works is my favorite? I don't think of my writings that way. I could never put one poem or story above the rest. I read of parents who have favorite children. That was never the case in my world. Our parents treated each one of us the same. And yet, each has a different flavor. Each brings something unique to the blend. Each is valued for its contribution to the whole. I wrote a short story and called it My Mother. It's based on my mother and father, on the actual life they lived, boiled down from the sap in the pail, if you see what I mean. Two people together, two people apart, a world they share, a world they do not share. The two apart, the two together, then one alone. So what is this story saying? 50 pages, a few thousand words? What is it saying to every reader who turns the page? And then a couple of pages over, that story comes alive each time I read it. I must have read it dozens and dozens and dozens of times. Questions cry out to me each time I turn a page. Why did they marry? What were their plans, their expectations? What their wisdom? What their naivete? What their truth? What kind of maelstrom did they enter? Through what kind of door? What is a story? What does it do? And what does it not? Does it leap right up off the page and seize the reader by the throat? Or does it lie on the lap and purr as it digs in its claws? Or does it serve for lighting the fire, one page at a time? What is a story? And what does it do? And what is it not? Well, I'll leave all that to others. All I can manage to do, I'm afraid, is to write the words. And then we go on to the next chapter, which will be chapter 13 of the interview. Well, this has been a very pleasant session. You've set me thinking on topics that I haven't considered for years. What is a life if the memories remain unexplored? Is the rain holding off? I hoped we could sit out on the porch, but there's a chill in the air that is not kind to these old bones. Yes, you may certainly come again. I've plenty of time to reminisce now that I make my home here in Vancouver, though perhaps there's a limit to what you and your readers might care to know. You were hoping for more, perhaps. You hoped I would spill the beans. You hoped you could offer your editor a scoop. Actually, I think of myself as an open book. All my secrets are in my works, in my stories and in my legends and in my poems. Some of those characters are definitely me. Some of those characters are definitely not me. But it would take a detective to figure out which is which. And over a few pages. But look beyond the ink and the paper. Look to the flesh and the blood beneath. Look to the heartbreak and the ecstasy that wells up through the page. Every one of us lives two lives, what we seem to be and what we feel we are inside. Live by both? Everyone has to. Believe in both? Well, that can be your Shakespearean flaw. Better than asking who am I, ask who is you. Have you found yourself in my writings? Where do you find yourself in the Pauline Johnson world? It's so easy to sit in an armchair and rattle on like this about life. All the wisdom one has gathered at harvest time. An interview as a pleasant diversion. A break in one's day. Unhealed wounds don't seem to show themselves in the elderly. All the fret and haste of life seems far away. All the anguish seems to be put away in a drawer. But my throat is getting dry. I seem to be doing all the talking. Let's pause for a moment, lest our tea grow cold. Now that's chapter 13. Let's go into chapter 14. I'll adjust my glasses here. Excuse me, I must have drifted off of my thoughts. What was I thinking when I had my eyes closed? Well, you remember, I'm sure, my saying that there's only been one thing in my life that has caused me deep regret. A number of times I tried to figure out how we could do a few scenes on stage, but it would take so many actors. We only had the two of us, you know. It just wasn't feasible to do it in our act. I drew diagrams and worked out exits and entrances. I would go to sleep with dialogue running through my head. I tried to imagine how it would play on a tiny stage. My partner, a young white male, would play a young Indian male, and I, a slightly older, mature, copper-colored female, would play a young English girl. The two young people would be in love. The two would discuss the objections of the families on both sides. Then the two of them would turn and leave the stage. But where would we go from there? A change of scene, another act, but I just couldn't figure out how to go on from there. And then a couple of pages after that, a skit of how many minutes, a skit of how many scenes, how to present three couples on the stage as the story goes on. The young couple, Indian and English. The older couple, Indian father and Indian mother. The sisterly couple, English husband and English wife. How would we manage the change of costumes? The stage would be bare for minutes at a time. And with only two actors, and no chance to use any makeup, how would the audience be able to tell when we were Indian and when we were white? Why didn't I turn it into a novel? Well, my life was so busy in those days, with the one-night shows and the constant travel from town to town. For days and weeks, I barely had time to turn around. I used to be completely exhausted. Some people said that my second book of poetry was nowhere as good as the first. Well, all I can say is that it's hard to write, hard to keep oneself mentally sharp when one is slowly being worn right down to the ground. It's too late now. I'm much too old and much too tired to do any more than apply my pen to a few little projects now. It's the one regret, I suppose, that I will take with me into the grave. Then chapter 15. No, I was never inside Buckingham Palace, though I had a dream that I was. In this dream, I found myself locked in an anteroom, a sumptuous room with all kinds of gorgeous fittings, gold brocade and chandeliers, and the portraits of all these great people were hung on the walls. The Queen was waiting to hear my recital. I thought I'd better get on the move, so I went over to the gold leaf handle on the door. I'd never been in a palace, though I'd recited in drawing rooms, but this was a far more sumptuous room than any I'd seen. But you know the strange thing about dreams? They seem so real to you at the time, but there's something in every dream that seems quite wrong. I put my hand on the handle. I twisted it this way and that. I couldn't figure out which way the golden handle should go. And then again, a page or so later, I wandered out onto a balcony. I couldn't believe the size of the crowd. I couldn't resist the urge to give the royal wave. Suddenly, everything went silent. A crowd of thousands and not a peep. I waved some more, but there was never any sound. I felt something on my shoulder. Someone was standing at my back. I didn't know whether I should dare to turn around. Oh, okay, here we are. It was the Queen, Queen Victoria, with her crown and regal robes. I was taken aback by how short she seemed to be. I didn't see the Queen as my better. No, I didn't see the Queen as my worse. I looked her in the eye. I had to bend down to meet her, face to face. I thought it was off with her head. This is my balcony. These are my people. But she told me to turn around and help her to wave. And then I woke up. I was in a sitting room in my apartment that I had rented in St. James Square. I was a visiting Canadian poet. I was hoping to meet the Queen. It took me a while to leave the world that had been the dream. And now the last chapter of the interview, chapter 16. Well, thank you for coming today. It's so nice at my age to have a chat with someone so young and so vibrant, someone starting out on his chosen path in life. I hope I've made this interview interesting for you. I could tell by the questions you send me that you take life quite seriously. May I say that I admire your approach to life? Let's find my page here. Do you agree that this interview is just about over? I can't think of anything more that I wish to say. You know, I feel as if I've pulled out all the stops. Oh no, it's me who should be grateful, rather than you. Perhaps this has been my most probing interview. Be sure to insist that it carry a byline with your name. So that's been a 16-chapter interview I did eight in each video. And here's a note that I'd like to read that I wrote about this. I believe that we humans are all the same in what makes us essentially human. Yes, we differ in ways that make us superficially human. We differ as to gender, race, religion, ancestry, national identity, profession, age, economic status, and any number of other categories that we separate ourselves and others into, reduce ourselves and others to, in order to try to understand the complexity of our world. But at a deeper level of our being, we are all facing the same challenges and aspiring to the same goals. We seek to realize the potential that we feel within us to the highest possible degree, and to seek the situations, whether of location or of social interaction, in which we can be our best selves, and in which we can present our best selves to others. At the deepest level of our minds, we are constantly engaged in a dialogue with ourselves, with the various compartments of our minds, in order to try to understand the significance of our lives, in an attempt to answer the ultimate questions. Where am I now in my search for my optimum self and situation? And where should I go from here in order to continue or to alter that search for my best self and best situation? That I am imaging this quest, the common individual human quest, as a dialogue between a retired artist and a real or imaginary reporter, is the surface of this story. That such a situation is that of everyone on the earth is the mythical level of human experience which the novel presents. Now, the novel, once again, is Pauline Johnson, Know Who I Am, a novel by John Passfield. It's found on Amazon. There's information there. My publisher's website is rocksmillspress.com, rocksmillspress.com. More information there. On my website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca, 2 free books. Planning Notebook, how I thought of the novel, structured it, and wrote it, all recorded as I went along, and hit my lumps and bumps, and hopefully made some good decisions. And also a journal. What did I think of the novel when I had a rough draft of 50,000 words and I was polishing it for a month or 6 weeks? So 2 free books at johnpassfield.ca just for clicking on the icons. And lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.